Ruselli Northern supports upstate New York construction with over 400 employees, 250 trucks, 9 ready-mix plants, 4 blacktop plants, and 40 aggregate mines. But their most important number is your bottom line. Contact them today to see why Ruselli Northern has been the choice for contractors and project managers across upstate New York since 1929.
All right, everybody, welcome into a special edition of Bills Weekly here on FingerLakes1.com. A bit of what we were collectively hoping would be a draft night one recap will turn into a discussion about stockpiling of draft picks. Who knows?
The rest of the weekend, yeah.
Certainly have my thoughts on that. But Paul Russo, Jim Sinicropi, and Kyle Evans here with you as we dive into a little bit of football here in the springtime with the NFL draft and the Bills trading down twice out of the first round even, and no pick in the first round. I believe they were the only team in the NFL this year after that final trade with the Panthers to not have a first-round pick this year.
Yeah, so they went into this draft obviously desperately needing a receiver, trading Stephon Diggs away to an AFC team that, I wasn't too thrilled with because they're going to be on the rise. That Texans team is going to be pretty good. And then they go and trade their first pick last night to the Chiefs.
No Gabe Davis, too, next year, so there's their top 2 receivers they lose, and you figure they replace one of them with their first-round pick.
Yeah, and regardless of, that the Chiefs might have still landed Xavier Worthy, you still don't make that move to help them. I would have rather have seen another team, help them out rather than the Bills literally just say, here, take this guy. The fastest guy in the draft is now a Kansas City Chief, the team that's knocked the Bills out for several years in the playoffs, and again, an AFC team.
Fastest guy in combine history. Seemed like he might have been a good fit for the Bills. So the Bills, you assume, are going to take a receiver with the first pick tonight. Although maybe not, but they're definitely going to be loading up on receivers throughout this draft. And they traded up, and the teams that took their pick both took wide receivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was interesting because obviously we didn't do a podcast surrounding the Diggs deal and everything, but when they made that deal, they ended up getting the Texans' second-round pick in that trade. And I thought they were going to parlay that to trade up potentially and get maybe one of those tier 1 wide receivers that we saw go, right? Maybe not Marvin Harrison. I don't know if they would have been able to get to the top 5, but you get to the top 10, maybe take Rome Odunze, someone along that line. They don't do it. Brandon Beane, in his press availability after the first round last night, said that that wasn't really an option on the table for them realistically. More smoke and mirror type thing than anything else. And the focus became kind of either staying in place or listening to offers, and end up listening to offers and trading back twice. Let's get into a little bit of that first deal. We mentioned the Kansas City deal. That's the one where we saw Xavier Worthy go. Buffalo receiving picks 32, 95, and 221 in that deal from Kansas City. In turn, they flip the 32 pick to Carolina for pick 33 and 141, in addition to pick 200 going to Carolina. So that means the Bills picks here remaining in the draft will be in round 2, picks 33, 60, in round 3, pick 95, in round 4, pick 128, round 5, picks 141, 144, 160, 163, and in round 6, 204, and round 7, 221. So a lot of stockpiling of draft picks here throughout the next couple days.
Settle in for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
You're a Bills fan.
And
it's the whole draft.
Yeah, and we'll jump into a little bit more here. Brandon Beane said also in his press availability that they've already gotten calls about pick 33, which will be the first pick later on tonight in round 2. I don't know what the plan's going to be at that point. Jim, you mentioned it, right? I'd imagine this is where you kind of take your pick of wide receivers here, especially
I
later
don't like to think
on.
about it.
Yeah, personally speaking, I thought this draft class was pretty good depth-wise in terms of talent available to everybody. I didn't think really outside of a lot of these high-end picks, it'd be worth maybe necessarily trading up to get. I think there's a lot of availability throughout the draft this year. Maybe they see something we exactly don't here, but having the amount of draft picks that they have on this back end, it almost feels like they're going to try and do some sort of packaging of some of them to also do some more shaking. That's just the feel I get from
Unless they
looking
can
at
get
it.
it for like an existing player, I don't
Right.
see how trading up or down at this point. I mean, I've seen it before in the NFL. There's a lot of talent and future Hall of Famers to be found in
Yeah.
the second through sixth rounds of the NFL draft. They don't only need wide receivers; they need secondary. You can always use depth at either lines. Running backs are going to be available late. Good running backs. So the only thing that bothers me is that you traded down and, like Kyle said, let one of your chief rivals in the AFC, Kansas City, the team that's been achieving the goals that you want to achieve by winning Super Bowls, and they take your number one need, and it's the fastest guy in combine history, which, again, in the NFL, speed is like the most important thing. And the Bills had a chance to get elite speed, and they didn't take it, and they let Kansas City take it. So just fast forward to next year, Wood's going to be running up and down the sideline. Who knows who the Bills are going to have? But Patrick Mahomes now has this kid at his disposal, and Josh Allen doesn't have anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mahomes just won the Super Bowl, and we talked all during the regular season how the receivers weren't good, and they still found a way to win the Super Bowl with the receivers they had, and now they get a guy like basically Tyreek Hill 2.0.
Right.
Obviously, we don't know how great he's going to be, but speed alone is a major factor in this. And yeah, I saw a lot of reports last night, especially from a scout here, ESPN, said that this was a smart move for Buffalo because they may be trying to load up for a T. Higgins trade package. While I think that would be nice, I don't think the Bengals are going to trade a wide receiver in the same conference to the Bills. Who,
Even if they do, though, like, okay, T. Higgins, like, yeah, he's established, he's good, he's got some injury issues, he's a solid, probably top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think he's a number one guy. If you were trading for Jamar Chase, maybe.
that would be nice, but
But
it never happened.
And I don't care that they traded Diggs. He was terrible last year. Like I don't miss. We're not going to miss Stephon Diggs. I really believe that he let him be somebody else's problem. But you do have to replace him, and you got to replace Gabe Davis. And they just had a great opportunity to get one of these top guys. Again, like you say, if Kansas City thinks he's good, he's probably pretty good.
Yeah, I would follow their plans considering
Yeah,
all the
right.
success they've had. People are talking about his size because I think he's only like 170 pounds.
I mean,
Why would that matter?
Yeah, how much does Tyreek Hill weigh?
Yeah, exactly.
and you just had Stephon Diggs. It's not like he's the biggest guy in the world by any
Yeah.
means, So the interesting part with this in the quick rundown here, I think, and Bean alluded to this, the Brian Thomas selection by Jacksonville at 23 appeared to be some sort of catalyst in the thought process here, I think, amongst teams taking wideouts or targeting wideouts. Obviously, the next one at that point was 28 with Kansas City, but Ricky Pearsall from Florida goes to San Francisco, who probably is going to have to replace one or the other of Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk, the way it sounds in this offseason. And then the Panthers taking Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. So there are guys there that they could have taken. And that's kind of the scratch my head portion of this a little bit. If you're going to build a package to try and trade for whether it's T. Higgins or Ayuk or Samuel or whoever, any one of those three, I think any team is going to want a number one pick anyway, a first round pick from you anyway. I don't think they're going to want a ton of 6th round or 5th round picks.
No, they'll be trading
Just
a
looking at
future.
it.
They'll have to trade a future.
Yeah, I just looking at those names, I would have just taken the pick on one of them, I think. And And the Leggett one's the interesting one because I hate doing the mock draft thing, but there was a lot of people who thought the Bills were going to take Leggett at 28 even. And he ends up being available to you at 28 potentially and obviously at 32. That's the one where it's really me kind of wondering what was the plan really going into last night.
Obviously, the Bills need to, the Bill Bean and the rest of the Bills draft team and scouts and they've done tons of homework. They talked to kids. They've taken a closer look than any of us have, and so they have some plan in mind. Obviously, certain guys that they're targeting that they think they can get, and not needing to take them in that first round. But historically, I don't know if they've ever proven that as far as talent evaluation that we can trust them.
Yeah.
You almost just want them to do the safe things. So, yeah, we'll see, and we won't know the answers to these things till like October, November.
Right.
If these were good moves, but it doesn't feel good as a Bills fan this morning. It'll be fun when the draft starts tonight and finally get a pick, maybe.
Yeah, and the only thing that Chiefs trade really did was give them a third-round pick, which they didn't have entering the draft. But other than that, I mean, what are they really benefiting out of this?
Well, if they feel like tonight they can get that guy that's as good as those other wide receivers, or maybe they don't go wide receiver, maybe they go safety or cornerback. Cornerback.
Yeah, I mean the consensus best available right now is cornerback Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, rated top 20 prospect on a lot of boards. He's still available. That's certainly an option on the table.
And your elite cornerback is just as important in the NFL as an elite wide receiver. So, and then maybe there's lots of wide receiver talent later in the drafts. They pick up 2-3 guys. Kansas City won the Super Bowl last year with 0 wide receivers worth of crap, right?
Yeah.
The Bills do have great situation at tight end. They do have returning wide receivers who have
Shakir.
upside, right?
And he was a fifth-round pick
That's a good point. So,
2 years ago.
but they're looking at that maybe the guy from Georgia, Phil McConkey's kid.
Yeah. Landon McConkey.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean that could be a good fit.
He's
for
up there
Buffalo.
too. He's up there too in a lot of lists.
And Coleman from Florida State, I believe, he has one. Troy Franklin from Oregon, or a bunch of others. There's options, so we'll see what they do.
So they get some of these younger guys. They get a guy, maybe it's T. Higgins, maybe not. But Kansas City showed last week that you can do it without a number one, diva wide receiver like Stephon Diggs. They certainly are good to have, but not necessarily in today's NFL to win a Super Bowl as the Chiefs.
Yeah.
People got to remember, we came in here a lot of times. We were talking about how bad the offense looked with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, this might look worse, but maybe it won't be as bad. Maybe
I don't
they'll
think it will. Diggs was so bad last year, especially down the stretch when you need it.
the
He
last, 10
disappeared.
games?
Just
One
disappeared.
touchdown?
He's supposed to be like that high quality of an elite wide receiver. And guys like that don't disappear for 7 straight weeks. And Gabe Davis was the same way. It's like, did Gabe Davis play in this game? Oh, I guess he did. He was in there for 20 snaps and caught 0 balls. So maybe they're in a way cleaning house. Maybe they can go into the season with a crew of 4 or 5 really good wide receivers like Shakir, but no like stars, and maybe they can win a Super Bowl. Maybe that's what when you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, they don't need that one guy that constantly needs all the attention and focus. They just need a wide open slate, so when they're creating things, they can throw it to somebody who's open, because it could be one of a bunch of guys as a play breaks down.
Yeah, probably less stressful for Josh, not worrying like, oh, if I don't throw it to Diggs here, we might have an issue on the sideline after this series or whatever.
Right, you shouldn't ever be thinking, okay, I haven't gotten Diggs the ball, the last 2 drives, so I'm going to make sure I force it into him here.
And we did see that. We saw times where he was clearly forcing the ball down the field into double coverage to try to hit Diggs, and underthrew it a lot of times, and it led to turnovers. So, yeah, hopefully you're right. And remember, they did get Curtis Samuel, a veteran receiver, a 3-year deal, a couple months ago. So right now it's Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel.
But Curtis Samuel, when that happened, it wasn't like, oh, yes,
No, it's not great, but we know he's going to play because they gave him $27 million. So those will be the two receivers.
When he's healthy, he can be a difference maker. I've been on the end.
Difference maker?
I've been on the end of that the past few seasons with Washington with him, but
Yeah, who knows? We'll see. It just when that happened, it was like, really,
can be not always. But it's interesting, right? I mean, you look at the best available top 10 wise. You have 3 cornerbacks, you have 3 wide receivers. You mentioned you can never go wrong with some depth at the line. On the defensive side, you also have 3, whether it's tackles or edges available in the best available top 10 as well right now. Really, the only outlier there is a linebacker out of A&M and Hedron Cooper. But
what if they do what Atlanta did and with the first pick of the second round, take a quarterback? Kirk Cousins.
Gosh, I mean, you know what? Far be it from me being the one to talk because Washington's on their 23rd. Will be on their 23rd starting quarterback since 2000 now. It's yeah.
What are the Browns? The second most used quarterbacks, probably.
I think so in that stretch, but yeah. The Browns get the easy bait for whatever. I think it's easier to beat up on them a little bit because of their ineptitude. But Washington's been borderline worse in their ineptitude
I do
in that
think
run.
the NFL has changed.
It never does.
It always changes over eras and decades and seasons. But you got to have that super elite quarterback, and the Bills do.
Yep.
You got to have good lines, and the Bills do, I think, even though they lose Floyd on defense. But it seems like all the rest of the stuff is not required anymore. You don't need that Barry Sanders type running back. You don't need the Randy Moss type wide receiver. But you do need the great quarterback. So, maybe the Bills are going for strength in numbers here and just trying to, load up on through the remainder of this draft. I'd expect them to pick at least 3 wide receivers and hope that, 2 of them end up being impact players.
Yeah, I would say that's a good number. Out of 10 picks still remaining, 3 receivers. I would definitely say add a corner. It wouldn't hurt to add a lineman. It wouldn't hurt to, just add depth. You never know. I mean, we saw last year the offensive line was pretty good. The defensive line, struggled with pressure at times. There's just a lot of different things they can do. It's going to be interesting to see what they do over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, and they're freed up a little bit now. I think, you kind of cleared house a little bit this offseason. So now they're freed up to kind of do some different things.
Much younger team going to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that can be fun. The only thing that leaves a sour taste in my mouth is you let this Woods guy go to Kansas City, and he seemed to be like just kind of what you needed. And so what do? You pick up some more picks later in the draft. We'll have to see who they get before we can give it a full evaluation on Monday morning.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that really kind of burns me is that they traded down, and the guys that traded up took the position the Bills needed. So it's going to be could be difficult to watch for Bills fans if Woods ends up being Rookie of the Year with Mahomes, throwing them, 10, 12 touchdown passes this year, and especially against the Bills maybe.
Yeah, and how about this? It was the first NFL draft in history with no defensive players drafted in the top 10. It was all offense.
It is strange.
I believe it was also, too, the first time ever that they had 14 straight on either side of the ball picked.
Yeah.
First 14 picks were all offensive players.
Yeah.
And it's the first time ever that in any spot, right? Didn't matter if it was one through that number or like say 220 to whatever. First time ever that 14 straight picks were on one side of the ball.
Great, because traditionally your rookies have more impact on the defensive side of the ball. They're more like ready to come in and play. They have less to learn, I guess, in a system to make an impact in their rookie year. So.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the wide receiver list right now, just quickly again. There are some really good names. I know we mentioned McConkey and Coleman, but Roman Wilson from Michigan's on there. Donnie Mitchell from Texas, Polk and McMillan from Washington, who.
But again, if you take Mitchell, Mitchell was the second best receiver on his team, and Kansas City took the first.
Right.
So I would hate being in that situation too, unless for some reason your analysis showed that you think that Mitchell is a better.
There's a McCaffrey on the board too right now.
Is he related to Ed?
Luke? Yeah.
Is his son?
I believe it's the brother of Christian. Yep.
Oh, the brother of Christian McCaffrey. I was thinking Ed McCaffrey,
No.
the old Broncos receiver.
Yeah, that's
That's the they're Christian and this kid are Ed's
I believe so, right?
sons.
Yeah. I think I'm not getting my familial lines crossed.
Either way, it makes me feel old.
Hey, there's it did. We haven't had it in a couple of drafts, but like I remember the back end of excuse me, Pat Surtain's career, and then obviously having his son now in the league.
Yeah, that happened fast.
Stuff like that. Yeah, and it's only going to keep kind of coming like that here for a little bit for a few guys.
I'm going to be having grandkids playing soon.
Yeah.
Of guys I used to watch when I was younger, but it's going to be a good weekend here.
Yeah.
For Bills fans, you're going to see a lot of guys that you're going to get to learn about and decide if they're a good fit or what not. And I think you're right. I don't think the Bills are done making moves. They might make a move that involves an actual player and not just draft picks.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and so it's exciting. Anything can happen. I mean, I don't know many. I do know of some of my friends who sit there and watch the whole draft from start to finish. I can't
That's
do it.
tough.
I just keep checking my phone and seeing who's up next and who's getting picked, and it is pretty cool. The NFL draft is a great event, and it's a great league, and everything they do seems to turn to gold. But I will say one thing, the draft was being held indoors last night. Like, take off these sunglasses. Why is everybody wearing sunglasses?
No, it
Like
was-
Marvin Harrison looked like
thought
a
it was
freaking
outdoors, wasn't
alien.
it?
Well,
Well, there's still like a cover over it.
and it was nighttime. Take off the sunglasses. Marvin Harrison
Yeah, there
looked
was-
like a freak. I wouldn't draft him. If I was going to pick him and I saw him at the draft, I'd say we're changing our pick.
Yeah, there was several guys doing that.
Yeah, it
I
was-
saw some tweets. Why are these guys wearing sunglasses?
Show your eyes.
I mean, I have a
Families
I
wanna
have a
see your
decent
face.
idea.
Yeah, be human. Be a little humble. You haven't done really any. Well, you have accomplished something. You high draft pick. You're going to get paid, but still, you're a rookie coming into a tough league, and you can just see these future diva receivers.
I liked kind of seeing they got obviously the current Lions out there, but seeing Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders was pretty cool last night as well. And I don't know, I wasn't a fan of them doing the draft thing on the road each year, but it's kind of grown on me now a little bit, and I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting though. They're in Green Bay next year for
Well,
it.
if they came
It's,
to
you know.
Syracuse, if the NFL draft came to Syracuse, I'm not going to the NFL draft. We can go there, sit around, and watch
Right.
like guys walk out on stage and hug Roger Goodell. Like, they don't even speak to the crowd.
Oh, the one kid did
Not
yesterday.
that you really want them to, but
And imagine last night being a Bills fan, traveling all the way there. You're waiting, and they trade back twice and don't make a selection in 3.5 hours.
yeah, better book a hotel room and come back tonight.
And then to find out they might trade the first pick of the second round. I mean, that would be terrible.
And Brandon Beane has been known historically to trade up. They traded
Yeah.
up for Edmonds. And
aggressive.
so this
They
is
traded up for
different.
Kincaid, right, last year?
Yeah, they trade. He's notoriously
been
traded up in
aggressive.
early rounds. And this year we traded down.
The only thing about the NFL draft is, for me, is the TV coverage. I know they try to cover a lot of stuff, but it's so slowed down. Like, I'm getting the pick 3 minutes before on Twitter.
It
and,
also,
Right.
yeah.
and I'd rather just go on Twitter to see. I don't really care, like you said, watching a guy walk down the aisle and just seeing the selection.
And showing the family remote, and when I see that, I'm just thinking of all these people thinking, I wonder how much money I'm going to be able to
Right.
get out of this.
So I mean, I had it on, but I don't really turn the
What-
volume up.
Yeah,
and pay
we were
attention.
playing cards, and it was on 2 TVs, and every now and then someone would say, "Oh, the Rams took this guy" or whatever, and we'd be like, "Oh, whatever." And then
What-
we waited all night for the Bills pick
Yeah.
twice.
What networks were you guys on? I was.
ESPN.
I've
Yeah.
switched over to doing NFL Network now.
That's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of Mel Kiper's best available. They didn't scroll the draft picks as the draft went on as much. I don't know. It was a little different. Just saying, as somebody I wasn't watching it intently.
Yeah.
They just look up every now and then and want an update. Like, we'd miss maybe a pick or two, and you'd want to see who it was. And the ESPN didn't really have it on the screen a lot.
Right.
But yeah, it's an event. It's a big day for all the people that do get drafted. But it was shocking to see quarterback. How about Penix?
I mean,
early,
I
right?
personally think he is the best quarterback available in this draft.
Ooh, what about the injuries?
Well, I say this because I know I'm out on this minority island on this one. I don't think there's a lot of great talent quarterback wise in this draft.
The NFL GMs disagree to the top three
I know
picks.
that they don't. Trust me, I was getting flack from my own family last night for not being thrilled with Jalen Daniels coming to Washington, and I don't know. I just view Penix as being the most pro-ready. I think it's just because he's the oldest and most mature out of the bunch, and he's going behind. In my mind, it's a good enough situation.
I like
but,
Penix. I just thought that he was a guy that would probably go in the late first round.
I didn't think he was going to make it out of the first round the way it was initially projected, just the way that everything was kind of shaken out the past couple weeks and stuff that people were saying. I think the shock was just the fact that it was Atlanta who just coughed over a lot of money for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, so why not trade down and pick up Penix? Like even if it's like 14th pick, I bet you Penix would.
I don't think Penix will be available at 14. Now looking at it, though,
with a guy that has that much injury history playing in college, and you come to the NFL where things can be a lot more physical. Although nowadays maybe not. They really protect the quarterbacks. But I will say this: 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3. All those fan bases, although apparently maybe not you with Washington.
I'm like the only person who's not thrilled.
Yeah, so all 3 fan bases are thrilled about their future Patrick Mahomes that they just drafted. But we all know from history that 5 years from now, 2 of those guys will probably be out of the league, and one of them will be in All-Pro. So it's I don't know how you tell. It's situational. Like last year, everybody thought it was the Carolinas Bryce
Young.
Bryce Young was like the no-hit guy, and then C.J. Stroud goes a little later and ends up being that guy. So it's a crapshoot. I wouldn't want to take a chance with one of my early round picks on a quarterback ever. And then you look at the greatest quarterback of all time, arguably, he was a 6th round pick.
Yeah, I don't. It's just one of those things where I don't know. It's one of those things where, to me, it always comes down, especially with the young quarterbacks, if you can't protect them and they're going to be on the run. I mean, we've seen that especially the past few years with a lot of different guys. I mean, it doesn't matter if you can't protect them. They're going to be on the run. You're going to destroy your confidence on them. And
well, like Caleb Williams, the only way he's going to be successful last year is if he's able to make stuff out of broken plays and run around. He's not going to sit back there in the pocket. He's not. I'll say it right now. There's no. He's not going to lead that team to a playoff or let alone Super Bowl. It's just not going to happen. Like C.J. Stroud was a enigma. It was a one in 100.
And even then, we don't know what this year actually is going to have in store for him, right? Because they're going to have a tougher schedule this year as well.
He's got to throw to Diggs a number of certain times.
Right.
Throw back to when Sam Darnold went before Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So same thing, right. Good job to the Bills for recognizing that Allen in that draft.
Yeah,
So
and I
maybe
remember
we should
fans
get
were mad when they didn't
Right.
select Darnold or was it Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, the wild part for me about that draft was I did, because Washington was also sniffing around quarterback that year. They didn't go that route. I think that was the year that they took
one of the
that
23 starters in the past.
No. I think that was either Jonathan Allen or Deron Payne. I can't remember which
Either
one.
way, not great.
And both
I
gone.
beg to differ on that one, but if anything, those were the only bright spots recently. But I was high on Josh Allen. I think I had him as my personal number 1, and I had Darnold too because I was just convinced that I think I was still sipping the USC Kool-Aid for some reason.
In Minnesota now, Darnold?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be
He's QB1 in Minnesota
right.
technically.
I mean, I kind of think that maybe finally he's found a situation that maybe he can be successful in. So, because a lot of it is situational. Let's say that Josh Allen went to the Jets. Do we think the Jets would be, what the Bills are now?
Sure.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it all depends on offensive line and receivers, really. If you
And
don't have an offensive
system.
line, you're never going to have success. Look at Bryce Young. Obviously, he's a rookie, and he didn't have a ton of weapons, only Adam Thielen. But look at the line he had.
Right.
Constantly getting sacked.
Yeah.
And he did have trouble holding the ball,
It's also a team just in absolute chaos anyway.
Yeah, so it really all depends on the situation.
And a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of things go into it. And
I mean, it only took
situation.
me a decade to finally cash in on my Geno Smith stock. I mean, So
So they're comparing Penix to Tua, which is kind of funny to me because they both have injury history.
lefty.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's just. I feel like that's just like lefty being lefty thing right there more than
And
anything else.
Turnovers are seen. I mean, they mention as a weakness turnovers, according to the
Why?
scout.
Because
Well-
he had a bad game in the championship.
They said in the 2023 season he finished with 9 interceptions in 11 games.
Don't show them Caleb Williams this year.
Right.
You know.
One other thing that I can't stand about the NFL draft is the guy gets picked, and then all of a sudden you see, here's his NFL likeness, and next thing you know, they're showing highlights of like Lawrence Taylor, or the best players ever. Like, okay, like in the best case scenario, maybe this guy becomes the next Lawrence Taylor or whoever. But let's get real about it. Let's wait and let him see play. There's as many busts as there are successes in these drafts,
I
and
wonder who they put up when Patrick Mahomes was drafted.
Yeah,
'Cause he was
right.
So late, and nobody knew he'd be, the way he is now.
And that's another good example, like, of a guy who you find these, you have more success finding these guys later in the draft than you do taking the super hype guys early.
Yeah, I laughed because on NFL Network they were doing they weren't doing a ton of player comps, but they were doing obviously like the superlatives, right? Like the top 3 things that this player kind of is, right? And the one I laughed most at was Aramis Mims from Georgia, the lineman, the big guy, and his top superlative was just massive. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, obviously
insight.
he's 6'5" and like 400 pounds. Like, of course, it's going to be his top superlative.
I found it. I have the comparison when Mahomes was drafted. This is hilarious.
Uh-oh.
Jay Cutler.
Oh wow!
Wait, are you telling me that that's what they did?
That's back in 2017 when they put the article out. They had Jay Cutler as his comparison.
They're 2 different
I
quarterbacks
don't know. They're
entirely.
basically twins.
Oh, that's
When
so
I think
funny.
of Mahomes, I think of Cutler. Cutler could have only got a better situation.
Listen to this. His weakness: too eager to go big game hunting.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's entirely inaccurate. in
Well,
a way.
he's gone big game hunting enough to multiple Super Bowls
Right.
and unbelievable playoff record. But that just shows you right there that this stuff is ridiculous.
Right.
It's just meant to fill time. And the draft does not need to take, 3 hours
No.
per round.
And like you said, teams do their homework. They kind of know what they're going to be doing. They don't need to drag out the clock. And for the first pick, they intentionally make that team drag it out.
Right.
But after
Everybody
that,
knows
let's
who's
move
going.
it.
Yeah.
Unless you're making a trade, I guess you need a little more time.
Well, you could do the first 2 rounds on the first night easily.
Yep. If you're quicker, yeah.
Yeah, they moved away from that again here in the past couple of years. It used to be they used to squeeze the first 2 in
Yeah.
after. For years, it wasn't. Well, for years.
But then it
it's
would
that
go
relatively,
late
but
because, yeah, whatever. It's fun. We all like to play fantasy football, and we do, so everybody's familiar with like the drafts, and this is like real. This is not fantasy. This is real world football draft, and it's very interesting. Teams are passionate about their fans are passionate about their teams, and this is how you build your team. So.
And the best part is we'll be back at it Monday morning about the same time to do it all over again, but for the whole draft for the Bills.
Yeah, weather looks good this weekend.
Hopefully.
Too bad we're all going to be sitting home watching our TV all weekend for the draft.
It's going to be a little bit too nice of weather, especially on Sunday.
I'm going to be on the
Actually,
golf course.
I
in
forgot.
the yard.
To be fair, there is no draft on Sunday. We're done Saturday, so I don't know. Either way,
Guys, please don't forget the NHL playoffs.
no, I won't.
No, I haven't. I haven't. It's the most exciting of all the playoffs.
And I guess if you want to tune into the NBA playoffs,
No, thank you. Not until the semis for me.
Yeah, we got there's a couple interesting storylines there, but that is a different podcast for a different time. So, Jim, Kyle, appreciate it. We'll see you guys and everybody else on Monday
And we're
morning.
going to no, the Bills are by Monday morning when we're back here. We're going to be talking about like what, a dozen players?
Hopefully.
yeah, at least 10 right now.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Hey, hopefully that's the case. I don't want to come in here and talk about no players again, which won't happen, but it's sports. Who knows what the hell might happen? So appreciate everybody for tuning in here quickly while we discussed what the hell the Bills did last night, and we'll talk again Monday morning about what they did in the draft for the weekend, I suppose, here. So
Have a good weekend, Mafia.
great weekend, everybody. Enjoy. Get outside if you can and enjoy the weather. Early spring is here.